Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Far Cry Primal. It's a full-price release, although you might be kind of surprised to hear that, because it's a bit of a spin-off of the main-line Far Cry series, which makes you think, oh, Blood Dragon then. Well, yes. I mean, it could have been, but it's not. I mean, this is a full-price release, and it's a full-sized release, at least that's what Ubisoft is claiming. So, it's a little odd, to say the least, but evidently they want full price for this. The question is, of course, is it worth it? Well, value proposition. Hey, that's a fun discussion topic, and something that is, of course, highly subjective, but I will try and tell you exactly what is in this game, and I can give you my thoughts on it, and of course, you can make up your own mind. First things first, options menu. Immediately, I am going to go right off the bat and say that this game has some serious performance problems in its current iteration. Now, I'm recording this on Sunday. The game comes out Tuesday, and the embargo is Monday morning, which is why this video is out when it is. Got to hit that embargo. As it stands, there is no NVIDIA game-ready driver for this game. I don't know when it's coming out. I'm going to assume launch day. That's a guess. So I can't tell you what the performance is going to be like on launch, which makes this video, at least in terms of performance, a bit tricky to digest and actually take seriously, doesn't it? I thought to myself, what option do I even have here? The game, let me put it this way, is incredibly demanding. To the point where my PC can barely keep it above 60 on very high and ultra at 1080p. My PC, as you're well aware, should be crushing this game. And I decided, right, this performance concerns me so much, I'm going to try it out on another PC. So I set up my laptop, and my laptop is an i7-4800, and it's got a 770M in it. And it's running 16 gigs of RAM, I believe. So pretty much right slap down the middle, run-of-the-mill PC. Pretty much average. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, that's about average. It's your average user right there. It runs terribly on that system, and that is with the latest NVIDIA drivers. It runs terribly. I'm talking, I cannot get it to 60 FPS on low at 720p. Not possible. Can't do it. Tried it both in a real game environment as well as the benchmark. Neither of them will maintain 60. At 1080p on high, which is the setting it actually defaulted to, it runs at 20 frames per second. That's awful. Knocking it down to low, I get about 45 on average. That's completely unacceptable. That is terrible. And when I'm talking about my regular PC, I'm looking at with one Titan X on, bearing in mind this doesn't have official SLI support yet, although I was able to force it via NVIDIA Inspector, though I can't tell you whether or not that's perfect performance. Anyway, point is, with one, while I was streaming, we benchmarked the thing, and it was around 60-65 frames per second on Ultra at 1080p, and it would dip below that at times. On low, I was around 90-100 at 1080p. There's something wrong there. There is really something wrong there. So, here's what I'm going to do, right? Once the day one patch for this game comes out, because it is getting one, and once the NVIDIA driver comes out, I will do a short video telling you what the performance is like compared to the performance in this video. That's all I can offer you at this point, because it seems to me irresponsible not to look at the game now, and of course it makes no sense for me not to hit the embargo when all the other outlets are not going to give a damn and release it anyway. So bear that in mind, right? Performance is based on pre-release review code without game-ready drivers because there aren't any yet. Cool. Now we have that out of the way, and hopefully I've given you a strong warning. Please pay attention to what I just said. If you go and pre-order this game and then complain about performance, you need to slap over the internet. Because I warned you. I warned you. Alright, cool. Let's get into some options, shall we? So we'll look at gameplay first. So aim assist and melee assist default to on. So you might want to turn that off because otherwise the combat, especially on normal, will be extremely easy unless you're fighting some of the big beasts. Weapon aim can be hold or toggle. Crouch type can be hold or toggle. Always nice to have those options. And hold or toggle for on-screen menus as well. This is the biggie. I'd turn this off immediately, because there is so much gathering in this game, way more than any other Far Cry game, that you are going to get sick of these animations in about 2 minutes flat. Turn them off immediately, you will waste your time with them. It's good that they were able to turn them off. If they weren't, I would have damned this game. Story recaps on or off. Okay, let's have a look at the interface options and see what we got here. So, language options are English, Swedish, Spanish, other Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, Norwegian, Italian, German, French, Finnish, Dutch, Danish, Czech, and English. That's impressive. Man, although those are the subtitles, unfortunately. If we look at the rest of it, you can actually change the rest of the language, although I'm going to be honest, I don't know whether or not that changes the voice acting. I'm going to make the assumption it doesn't, but here's the thing. It actually doesn't matter, because there is no English in this game anyway. All of the language in this game is made up. Completely made up. It's some sort of prehistory 10,000 BC language that doesn't really exist. So, really, there's no spoken English at all, unless there's a sequence much later in the game which has some spoken English, and I can't imagine there would be. So, it makes sense that they have all these language options available, because they only have to subtitle them. Yay! There we go. We've got a solution now for all games. Just make up the language, and you don't have to worry about getting other voice actors. That must just save them some money. Reticle on or off, detection meter, hit indicator. Basically, this is all helper stuff that you can have on or off, which is nice. I love the fact that they allow for this. You can also change the opacity of the minimap, which is, again, nice to have. Showing trails, interactive prompts, all sorts of things. Huge amounts of options here. I like this. I really do. Far Cry 4 did have this. I think this is even more expansive, so keep doing this. You know, this level of interface customization is most welcome. Keyboard and mouse defaults to off on acceleration. Good. No acceleration value. Customizable controls here. You don't seem to be able to bind a second key, from what I can tell. I like this little burning torch thing. That's kind of neat. It does also show you where the keys are on the keyboard, just in case you'd forgotten. Don't really see any massive problems with this. As you can see, mouse 4, mouse 5, these all work, which is good. So I'm pretty happy with the keyboard controls. Nothing to really complain about there, honestly. And very few shared buttons, although there are a couple. Takedown, carry, body. Although, admittedly, I don't think there'd ever really be a situation where you would have those conflict, unless a corpse was very, very close to an enemy target. Beast move and attack. You know, for the most part, these shared keys aren't really a problem. So I think they've set this up really well. But honestly, if they hadn't, considering the amount of Far Cry games they released on PC, I'd be scratching my head. Gamepad. So you got things like touchpad functionality, which means, as far as I know, that this actually supports PlayStation 4 controller, if you actually want to use that. Shoulder swap control schemes. In this case, it's bound to my hitbox. I would not recommend playing Far Cry with a hitbox. That seems like a fairly bad idea. But otherwise, you know, kind of standard. The only thing, again, that's missing is the ability to rebind controller keys, which is unfortunately a common omission from many AAA games. Video options. Okay, this is where things get ugly. So, you can see here, we're running on the Titan X. We're actually recording this with SLI. Now, as I said, the SLI support is currently not official because I hacked it in through, well, I didn't as much hack it. That implies that I did more work than I actually did. NVIDIA Inspector allowed me to force SLI through a Far Cry 4-based profile, and it seemed to work pretty well. I haven't noticed any obvious problems, but it's probably not optimal. Change your display and main monitor, that's always nice, and your aspect ratio here, so that gives you your other resolutions. Obviously, we do not want to run this in 1080p, in 720p, that would be pretty bad. Refresh rate goes up to 144, that's great. Windowed mode, VSync off, always nice for those of you who use G-Sync monitors. Make sure you turn this off. You also have borderless and regular windowed mode available here, which again is very, very nice. We like that. Graphics quality settings. All right, so we go to quality settings. You'll see what's available here. Textures are high is the highest. I believe I'm on high on everything. The only thing I have off at the moment is anti-aliasing. You'll notice the only option available here is FXAA, unless I'm running on only one card, in which case I believe I get SMAA, I think, or MSAA. I can't remember which is better, totally. But FXAA, I prefer it off versus that. So, you know my opinions on FXAA these days. I used to actually quite like it. When it first came out, it was a very efficient AA, and a lot of AAs at the time were very demanding, but as I've got higher resolution monitors and displays and kind of become more experienced, I just don't like FXAA anymore, really. It's too smudgy. Volumetric fog, we'll go for very high on this just because, you know, I want to indicate some performance and show you it at the best possible detail. But as I said, I have tried all the settings. I have tried to knock every single setting down to low. I've tested all of them. I've run it on low, and performance is just diabolically bad on any PC that isn't fit to eat a small planet like this one. As I said, my laptop, which is decent, you know, can't handle this at all, and my PC is struggling, and that should not be the case. That should not be the case at all. Only other thing to notice here, you have a weird VSync mode that is VSync and sparse, so you can lock it to half the monitor resolution. I can't even, refresh rate, I can't even imagine why you'd want to do this. I'm sure there's some obscure reason. But outside of that, you got field of view scaling. I have noticed, by the way, that for some reason field of view barely affects the actual performance of the game, which is unusual. Audio options are lacking, master volume and music only, so no voice acting, no ambient sound, you can't customize those, they need to work on that. And what I will also note is that while they have a good amount of interface options, what is conspicuous by its absence is color deficiency or colorblind options. Bear in mind that red indicates enemy, green indicates friend. You know what the most common type of color deficiency is? I hope I'm right on this. Red-green color blindness. So they might want to add that. You got a benchmarking tool here. This, I found, is fairly representative of the game's performance and actually shows you the opening area and lake. So this benchmark is accurate, but it will only really give you a frame rate. That's really all it does. It doesn't give you any detailed information. You might want to run it just to make sure your settings are right, but I can guarantee if they don't improve performance on launch with drivers, your settings are not going to be right anyway. Now, for some reason, it says I've only played this 4.5 hours. I don't believe that's true. I'm pretty sure I played it for at least 6, but one way or the other, as I mentioned, this is a first impression series and you should take it in that context. So let's dive in and see what's going on with Far Cry Primal's gameplay. You'll have a little story recap here, by the way, which I actually want to skip because I don't want to spoil anything for you in terms of the storyline. But it's a nice little recap, and I like this little trend that they've got lately in AAA games of adding story recaps. It's good when you come back to a game at a much later date to be reminded of exactly what was going on. So I dig it. Please do more of that. All right. Welcome to my cave. This is my village, or at least it is my cave in my village. You can also set yourself on fire, which is a really good feature of Far Cry Primal. Glad they added that. And you have what's called the reward stash. Now, as you build your village up, your village is going to gather things for you every day. And you can find them here. So I am out of hardwood. I should take my reward stash right here. So you can fill up your pack, basically, with stuff from the reward stash. And that's handy. It's a little bit convenient. Lets you carry more. There we go. Got throwing shards and also show you all these other resources. So there are resources required to build up your village, which is basically a giant content gate. There's actually a lot of things in this game that are a giant content gate, but I'll get onto more of that later. So as the village expands, you'll be able to upgrade the huts of the various kind of village elders, and those elders are going to unlock more skills and more crafting recipes for you. That's the sole purpose of them. So you need various village resources, different kinds of wood, and all sorts of things like that. Now, the annoying thing about this is that I can't transfer resources from my pack to my stash. I can do it the other way around, but basically this means that you are capped on the amount of stuff that you can carry around. And because the building in the village is so gated, you require some fairly serious progression to get the next level of hut for that particular person. You're stuck carrying all this stuff around that you can't use, which is not good. I don't like that at all. I think that you should be able to empty your pack back at base. That would make much, much more sense, and it would make the building process a lot easier. It also means that while you're gathering, you're also gathering stuff that you don't even need. So it's like, oh, your pack is full of this as you grab some wood or some slates. Like, well, that's great. I wasted my time running over here. So you have to keep track of that, which I think is unnecessary. And I really do think they could have very much made this a lot easier than they have. Things like the rare materials, that's not a problem because you can still carry 50 or even 10 of those, which is often enough. But with the common materials, 50 is nowhere near enough. Getting 50 wood in this game is not hard. Okay, so that's the resource system. Again, it's fairly easy to understand. If we head on over to the inventory, you'll notice that there's a crafting menu here, which lets me spend these resources. I need to get 4 Southstone to upgrade my club. There are 4 main weapons in this game, which is actually a pretty low number in my opinion. They are upgradable a couple of different times. So this is my bow. That's one of the main weapons. I, for the most part, use this. I think it's more effective than most of the others. The club is your main melee weapon. You can throw it to stun, and you can swing to hit multiple enemies. You can also hold down your left mouse button to charge. And spear, which can be thrown. It's a very high damage throwing weapon, good for taking down boars and tough enemies. Actually has a nice amount of impact when you throw it as well, which I really dig. And it's for stabbing as well. And I'll show you how terrible the stabbing is once I get into some melee combat. You got some bait and some different kinds of bombs. There's also some throwable shards here. Your arrow quiver, which you can upgrade to carry more arrows, obviously. And you can get all sorts of different things like carry more of this, carry more of that, blah, 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 blah. And there are things like traps and also upgrades to the bow and the club. Like you can get a 2-handed club, you can get a double bow or the longbow, which is a little bit of a variance. Then fire bombs and berserk bombs are available there. So the weapon selection, in my opinion, is pretty sparse. I mean, especially when you compare it to the previous Far Cry's that had huge amounts of them. Not to mention, of course, those weapons were customizable. So this is a massive step backwards. And you can maybe start to justify that by saying, well, it's the setting, TotalBiscuit. It's the setting, that's why. Yes, but that's an excuse. That's a contrivance to excuse a lack of weapons. It doesn't mean that a lack of weapons is good. Okay, so skills. This is an area of the game that I really don't like. So each of these different elders, once you bring them to your village, which can take a little bit of time, gives you access to a few different skills that are all linear in terms of their upgrade. So you can get everything eventually just by getting enough skill points and experience. The problem with these skills is the vast majority of them are incredibly dull. They're mostly passives, like more health, better heals. You know, there are some which do actually alter the gameplay, like Primitive Fire, for instance. Or down here, there's one called Beast Rider. You can ride a saber-toothed tiger. Yes, that's probably the best thing about it. Or a mammoth, you know, if you're into that kind of thing. These are cool. These are skills which fundamentally alter the way that the game is played. Those are skills that I like. Everything else is passive. Everything else is like, oh, this is better now. And a lot of the skills are really designed just to make things more convenient. You might think, that's fine. What's the problem with convenience skills? Here's the problem with convenience skills. Convenience skills is a flagrant omission that some of the main systems in your game are actually dull. If you want to make crafting easier and quicker, then I have to ask you, well, was crafting that good to begin with? Was gathering that interesting? Because if not, then didn't you just give me a bunch of pointless busy work? And frankly, the game is actually kind of full of pointless busy work. That's most of the game, I would say. It's about gathering things. It's about hunting and gathering, which again, in terms of the setting, is totally fine. The setting justifies that behavior, but that doesn't mean it's that interesting. And I'm not the sort of person that likes pointless busy work. You're probably quite aware of that, I imagine. You should be aware of it. I think I've made my opinion on that abundantly clear. Now, my game can't even maintain 50 frames per second right now as I'm recording, so I'm a little bit upset by that. I'm going to switch over to a different recording device just to see if I can get a little bit better performance out of it, and I'll be right back. Nope! Doesn't matter. My recording software is maybe cutting off 2 or 3 frames at most, so... You know, I'm going to let it run at this. Usually, I don't even accept a video that doesn't run at a constant 60. Because I think it's a bad viewing experience. You know, it's noticeable. You're going to see the frame drops. But you know what? This is a video about showing how badly this game runs, even on a $7,000 PC. So, I think we're going to leave it. We're going to let you experience the frame drops as they happen. As I said, I am really concerned about the performance of this game, and I goddamn hope the driver update and the day 1 patch actually fixes it. Again, I'll let you know in a future video. Okay, let's get back to the game. So as I was saying, most of the game consists of gathering and also leveling up these different areas within the village. Now, I like the idea of maybe building my own village. The problem is I'm not actually doing that. The only thing I'm really doing is running up to this and pressing upgrade. I don't get to design the village. There is a bit of village defense involved, but I don't think it happens outside of the storyline. I've never seen it happen outside of the storyline, so it's not like, hey, you can build some defenses and upgrade your guys' weapons and stuff like that. Those all sound like interesting concepts, but you can't do any of them. So, really, the village consists of nothing but a giant content gate. As you go out onto the map, you will see the standard Far Cry little problem, I suppose. Some people love this. I mean, I'm not gonna claim that they don't, but this is the Far Cry syndrome. In fact, I'd say this is Ubisoft syndrome when it comes to their open world games. A map covered in icons. You know, is that not a thing that sums up Ubisoft in a nutshell these days? So, it's full of fast travel points, campfires which will unlock spawn points and stashes, unknown areas, hidden caves, missions, strongholds. This sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, because pretty much everything in this game was also in Far Cry 4 to some degree. But the game actually has less variety in terms of missions than Far Cry 4 does. Also on the map, the main quest objectives, which are get these dudes back, basically, to your village. So, Karush the Warrior is the next guy, and he'll present you with a challenge of some description, and once you get him, you'll probably get a special tool or something, and then you'll be able to get his crafting stuff and get his skills and so on and so forth. That's the game in a nutshell. There's a lot of that, and of course doing that requires gathering. Oh, so much gathering. You might find a few stashes here and there that are hidden in the trees, which are kind of fun to bring down. That's always nice, but other than that, let's pick some blue stuff. Yeah. Yoink. Uh-huh. Yep. Bear in mind, if I didn't turn search animations off, this would be taking a couple of seconds here every single time. Why would you want that? I can't imagine. There's a lot of this in the game because you never know when you're going to need these resources. And I will tell you this, the amount of resources you need, especially early game, to keep shooting is pretty high because you actually have to craft each and every arrow. Thankfully, later on in the game, as you've noticed, you can craft multiple arrows at a time from a single piece of wood. You also have to craft clubs. If you set any of these things on fire, they're eventually going to burn out. Of course, you know, if you don't retrieve your spear, then you'll have to make another one, and these are actually kind of pricey. So it's gathering constantly. You're constantly going to be doing this, and that's not the only reason you're going to be doing that, because you have a pet. Hello, Mittens. This is Mittens. Where's Mittens gone? He's bloody well vanished. Mittens! Mittens! Get over here. Bloody hell. Alright, there he is. Okay, hi. This is Mittens. He's my saber-toothed tiger. Apparently you can ride him, which is awesome. I haven't got the skill yet, which is not awesome. I'm gonna pet him, because you can. You can do this to a number of different kinds of beasts. I showed you the beast menu right here, actually, which shows you the kinds of beasts you can get. So, there are various categories of beasts, and they each have different stats. But I will say that the way that you use each beast is pretty much identical. Obviously, there are things like bears, which are tougher, and then there are things like cats, which are faster, and then there are these little dog things, I don't know what they are, which are a bit stealthier. But ultimately, you use your beast in exactly the same way every single time, which means you point at the target, and you hit G. Go get him. Go, Mittens, go on, play with him. Mittens is getting a little bit aggressive, as you can see. He's had enough of Far Cry Primal. So, Mittens has eaten, well, killed this goat. It'll actually eat from the goat as well if it's taken any injuries. But the reason you need to keep gathering meat and such is that you need to feed your pet when it takes... You know, that's really rude. When it takes any damage. He just dropped it. What a waste. So, you need to keep feeding it meat, and this is particularly true if you go up against, like, a high-level animal, like a bear, or worse still, a mammoth, or something like that, because some pets die really, really quickly. Like, they'll only take a couple of hits, and then that'll be that. So, you have to revive them using meat, you have to heal them using meat, and you're gonna have to keep gathering meat, which means you're gonna have to hunt. Now, the hunting process is relatively interesting, I think, anyway. I mean, it's a pretty good hunting process. You're sneaking around, you're shooting animals, you're trying not to startle them, and all that kind of thing. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the way that it works. The thing is that it's already been done in all the other Far Cry games. So it's, you know, for a game that focuses so much on hunting, they added almost nothing to the systems. We set that goat on fire, which was pretty great. And now I'm on fire for no apparent reason. It's the Far Cry fire system, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Yeah, you know how that goes. We'll eat some meat and show something we're not on fire anymore. It's lovely, isn't it? One would think that with a setting like this, when you're taking so much out of the game versus what Far Cry 4 has, that you would focus on certain other aspects and you'd expand them. The problem is they haven't. Have they expanded the crafting aspect of the game? Not really, no. No, crafting is pretty much identical. I mean, right down to the, you've got to craft different ammo pouches from different animal furs. That was already in Far Cry 4. And in Far Cry 4, it made no bloody sense. In this game, it actually makes sense. Hi, boar. You, don't have much peripheral vision, do you? Eat it. There you go. Get him. Get him. Thank you. In Far Cry 4, it made no bloody sense. In this game, it makes loads of sense, but the problem is we've already seen that system. I expected more from it. And there's so much that they've taken out of Primal versus what Far Cry 4 has. For instance, movement speed, logically, but annoying nonetheless, is a lot slower. You can fast travel, and eventually you can ride a beast if you get a lot of skills to do it. But outside of that, you don't have a wingsuit, you don't have vehicles, I mean, of course you don't. And you might, again, justify that with the setting, but that's still a thing that Far Cry 4 had that Primal doesn't. And the question is, what did you replace it with? If you take something out of the game, I expect you to replace it with something else that makes it more compelling and fits with the setting, and they haven't done that. You know, I actually can think of a way to do it. And maybe that's later on in the game. I'm not saying it's impossible, because again, this is the first impressions, but I haven't seen a skill that lets you do it. What if you were able to actually transform into a beast? What if you were someone that possesses beasts instead of just tames them all? You know, there's a lot of mysticism in this game. There's plenty of that. There's the drug sequences, again, which Far Cry has done several times over now, so that's not all that interesting anymore. Why couldn't I transform into an owl? Why couldn't I transform into a cheetah, possess a cheetah, and run across the plains? That would be fun. I'd dig that. You know, take control of an animal directly. Is it anywhere in the skill list? No. I mean, do you see it anywhere? No. It's, you know, this is a... Make no mistake. You might think this is an untraditional Far Cry game, but it is as traditional a Far Cry game as it gets. The problem is that, again, it has so much less than Far Cry 4 and even Far Cry 3 had. Its weapon selection is much, much poorer, and it has a focus on melee combat, and yet the melee combat is completely underdeveloped. This is the animation for the spear. This. Are you kidding me? Are you an early access survival game? It's poking! Let's go find an enemy to poke. Get over here. I actually can't find any pokes. They're all going to run away. But you get the idea. I'll probably find a tribesman I can kill at some point. The poke, you know, this animation is pretty piss poor. You know, for a AAA game, I'd expect better. And the weird thing is a lot of the animations of the game are good, like petting the tiger. That's good. A lot of effort put in there, but the actual melee combat, not so much. And not to mention that, the system has no depth to it. It's swing or swing longer. That's it. Or throw the weapon. Now, as I said, I do like the range system. I think the spear has a lot of nice weight behind it, requires a good amount of aim and patience, and it can really send people flying back as well. You know, I really appreciate the amount of impact the weapon has. The bow's good too. It's the problem, Far Cry did bows over and over and over again. Like, the bow system isn't any better than the bow system in Far Cry 4. It's pretty much the same. Only without things like the sights and explosive arrows and all that fun stuff. Again, what have you done that Far Cry 4 didn't that justifies that full price tag? Not coming up with many answers, are we? No, not at all. Alright, I said I'd show you the spear animation. Let's stab him. This is the spear animation. Poke, poke, poke. You know what really bothers me? The lack of visual feedback on the models. Like, they could have got away with this if they had made it so that their weapons do real damage to the bodies. If I poke someone with a spear, they have a visible injury. They don't. That's the main problem. You know, I just threw a spear right through that guy's freaking head, you know? Did it make a lot of difference? Not really. You know, when I'm stabbing one of these boars, why does this boar not have wounds all over it, you know? It shows blood on the ground, which is good, but that's all it does. And I think if they'd added that, then the melee system would have had a lot more impact. But even then, the melee system... Oh, God! It happened again! Why does this happen every time I look at a Far Cry game? Why? Alligators probably weren't even real in this time. Oh, sod off! You dinosaur bastard. As I was saying, before I was so rudely eaten alive, where's the rest of it? This is not an advanced melee system. This is what I wanted to see. If you're going to focus so much on melee, you better make your melee good, and they didn't. They didn't. So the combat ends up falling flat. At least in melee. No, range combat's fine, but is it as good as Far Cry 4? Well, no, because Far Cry 4 had a lot more variety to it. And of course, things like guns had weight and all that kind of thing. I mean, I don't mind some of it. You know, you got the sling right here, which is kind of fun to use and do a lot of damage, but I believe it has infinite ammo, which is always nice as a like backup weapon. And plus, who doesn't want to use a sling, right? That's fun, but I think they could have added a lot more. I mean, what about bowlers, for instance? You know, could have added bowlers in there, maybe a hammer or something along those lines. That was a terrible idea. I probably should not have poked the bear. But thankfully I've got a lot better at killing bears. They used to be very dangerous. So yeah. That's the core part of the game. Is fighting things. You know, killing stuff, gather stuff. Kill stuff, gather stuff. That's the game. That's what Far Cry has been for quite some time. Outside of the story. The thing is, a lot of the story is kill stuff, gather stuff. Kill stuff, gather stuff. Because the story is intrinsically tied into this village concept. And the idea of bringing these elders back to the village itself. Which, to me, very much feels we are not fighting that. We will die. Good God, we will die. It very much feels like the main quests are actually optional side quests, but they're not. And I'm not the first person to say this, so I'm not going to claim it's an original thought, but I think it's true. These main quests feel like side quests, because for the most part, they're just gating of content. You know, they're gating skills, they're gating items, they're gating power-ups, all behind, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta collect this, gotta collect that. It's so much open-world busy work. And there are some games that can kind of get away with that. I almost let Mad Max get away with it because I found the core gameplay loop to be so satisfying and introduced this really interesting, unique concept, the car combat, something that other open-world games weren't really doing. And I asked myself, does Far Cry Primal do anything like that? You know, what does Far Cry Primal bring to the mix outside of an interesting setting and some really awesome sound design and some excellent art direction? And the answer is not a lot. The pet system could have been it, but it's barely a system. It's, you have a pet, it has stats and an ability of some sort. Aim, hit G, it goes and attacks. Hit Alt, it waits. You also have this owl. It's basically a drone. The owl is a drone. I don't know why, but it is. You can do things like drop bombs from the owl, which is excellent and a really cool little feature, but I'm going to be honest, the owl is so damn slow when it comes to traveling that I don't even bother using it. Now, you can use it for recon, but I think that only on higher difficulty levels will that ever be relevant. I have never had a point where I've stumbled across a tribe and not being able to completely wipe them out easily. But again, I am playing on normal. I imagine the owl is going to be key to expert mode, which is not actually in the game yet, by the way, so I couldn't test it. It's a day one patch. But in normal mode, the owl just doesn't even get used outside of the story quest. I don't even bother with him. Like, he's pointless. He doesn't do anything that I would really find useful. And really, again, it's only a drone. I mean, it's just a replacement for the binoculars, essentially. It's a cool little spin on them, but that's really all that it is. It's a reskinned drone. All right, finally, enemies. Okay, we're going to shoot them in the head. No, that was odd. Okay, do I have more complaints? You betcha, I'm afraid so. Now, as an open world game, this is a title that has a huge amount of invisible walls. It has leaving mission area be one of the most common things you're ever going to see. I think more so than any other Far Cry game to date, and I don't even see the necessity for it. If you wander off the beaten track even a little, it's often saying, leaving mission area. You'll be spawned otherwise, or you'll fail the mission if you do this, and a lot of these missions aren't even time sensitive, so there's no reason for them ever to have that as a thing. It's almost like they put it in the game to make sure you didn't get lost, which is a bit unfortunate, because I think the tracking aspect in some of the quests in this game is kind of interesting. You look for marks on the ground, you use your hunter vision to look for blood trails and all that sort of thing. That's a cool little aspect of the game that, in my opinion, so far anyway, in the first 5 or 6 hours of play, has been underplayed, and something that I think the game would benefit from greatly if they actually expanded that concept more. That's maybe the theme of this video, isn't it? It's like, if only they'd done more with this idea, because there's the basics, there's the foundation of something really cool and unique here, but they just didn't go anywhere near far enough with it, and they took so many ideas basically from Far Cry 4 and just rethemed them that it's very hard to treat this game as anything other than an expand-alone for full price, which is going to be a very difficult value proposition for people, particularly when the game doesn't have co-op, whereas Far Cry 4 did. So again, it's a step back once more. You know, and if you want to play a Primal cooperative game, then you've got something like Ark, which obviously has a lot more interesting systems than this game does, even if it's not as polished. It really feels like this game needed more focus and less padding. It needed to be smaller. I would have made a $15 game out of this, or 20. I would have made a Blood Dragon. You know, maybe 8 hours, focus, just, you know, focus on those 4 weapons. Because Blood Dragon didn't have that many weapons, but it focused on 4 really fun, or 4 or 5 anyway, really fun guns. And some cool concepts like, that's a giant mechanical dinosaur thing that's radioactive. You can lure it into camps and all that sort of thing. And obviously they've used that a lot since. And they use it here too. But that game was $15 and worthwhile. It was silly. It had a unique theme. It had a really cool aesthetic and soundtrack. It was funny. It was worth the playthrough. This game feels like that, only they took what Blood Dragon had, changed the theme to be an albeit very interesting theme. That being the idea of a prehistory FPS. And then they spread it out. Oh, why is everything trying to murder me? God damn it, America. Get the hell out of here. Thank you. They took the length and the content of something like Blood Dragon and they spread it over 3 or 4 times the size of a map and 3 or 4 times the size of a game in length. And it's not enough, in my eyes. I'm already bored. I was bored 2 hours in. I'm 5 or 6 hours in. I'm still bored. I'm not playing this game because I want to play it. I'm playing it because I have to play it. I never like feeling that way. I mean, who the hell would? It's impossible to recommend a game that makes you feel that way. But I will admit that I am suffering from some major open world fatigue, and I think a lot of people are as well. I talked about it at length when talking about Mad Max, but again, you know, I understood that some reviewers felt that way. I didn't. because Mad Max had some really cool, unique ideas that were not in other open world games, and it was a theme that I liked so much, and I love car combat as much as I do, that I was able to get at, you know, I was able to get around that. Thank you, Mittens. But this game, I am unfortunately not finding that aspect anywhere. I'm looking for it. I'm desperately, desperately looking for it. I'm not finding that anywhere. This thing that sets it apart is the setting alone, and the setting alone is not enough for me. It really isn't. God, and that's a shame, because there's some really nice design in this game. I mean, look at this bow. Look at the amount of detail they put into that. You know, the nice little carvings in the back of it. The fact that they made up an entire language of sorts for this game. I like that. I think it was great. They have some really cool characters as well. You know, really awesome, weird, aggressive, strange people. You know, the kind of witch doctor or shaman type fellow is very interesting. There's a guy that literally pees on your head. I mean, who wouldn't want that? It's actually not part of the box feature list, by the looks of it, but hey. Those are cool things. And it's not like the game is not pretty. It is. It's kind of gorgeous in many ways, but so was Far Cry 4. That's the problem. You know, this is not, I don't think, a technical advancement over Far Cry 4, really. I don't feel that. I really don't. And the sequences, which I think could have been done a lot better, like the drug sequences, are just that most of them are just lacking. You know, it's a mixed bag. The couple of drug sequences I've done, one has been incredibly boring, and the other was okay, but outstayed its welcome. That's kind of how I would describe that. Can I even get to the top here? Ooh, I hope so. I've probably got to swing or something to get there. I think you can attach. You've just got to kind of get just. You know what? I don't care. Let's go down. As I said, those sequences are just, they're not that interesting in my eyes. And the game is a giant farm simulator. It's just gathering all the time, constantly, over and over and over again. You know, getting to a place takes too long because you're going off the beaten track for every single herb and every single piece of wood because you know you're going to need it at some point. And I don't find that all that entertaining. I don't know about you. That is a freaking huge bear. Okay. I don't find that all that interesting. Maybe you are the person that does. Maybe you're not fatigued when it comes to open world games yet, and you like gathering, and you find it satisfying. Okay. You might find your zen here, especially in this really interesting wild land with this awesome sound design and really great ambient music and the kind of things that you just don't hear all that often in games. You may enjoy it. Well, it's a holiday, but then again, so was Far Cry 4, and Far Cry 4 also had an interesting setting that wasn't seen all that much in games, and it also had a cool soundtrack, and also had good visual design as well as sound design. Why am I not playing Far Cry 4 again? That's what I keep asking myself. I mean, if you're played out on Far Cry 4, I mean, I think that you will actually find this quite dull, because you're retreading the same ground in a different hat. I think it's a waste of a good setting. And I think as a value proposition, it's pretty weak, honestly. I don't think this is worth full price. This is a sale game. This is a game for people that are not already sick of Far Cry. This is suffering from Assassin's Creed syndrome in a massive way. Huge way. As in, we took the same mechanics and we changed the time period. Now, Assassin's Creed is getting a little better. Syndicate took some steps to really flesh out the game and change some ideas. Same with Black Flag. But Primal doesn't. This is Far Cry Unity. You know, that's how I describe it. This is Far Cry Unity. Both in terms of performance and in terms of the fact that they really didn't flesh the game out all that much, and it actually regressed versus the previous one. It's a great comparison, and so apt considering it's the same company and some of the same studio involved. No, it's actually not the same studio, but it's the same publisher, sorry. I really shouldn't say it's the same studio, because that clearly isn't true. What a waste of a good setting. I think, again, this should have been an expand-alone, $15, more focused, flesh these systems out, better pet system, more interesting crafting system, maybe take the mysticism to another level. That would have made it very interesting. The ability to possess animals and actually fight as an animal would have been a huge change to the series, which would have actually been enjoyable in my eyes. And unless they hid that much, much later in the game and didn't even reveal the fact that you could do it. I mean, there's not a key for it, you know? Weirdly enough, the key binding menu is a giant spoiler for all games. I don't know if you noticed that, but if you go to the key binding menu, you can figure out what the game's going to let you do later, like what weapons it's got and all that kind of thing. Is there a possess bear? No. No, of course not. That is not an aspect to the game. But if it was, damn. I wonder if they'll put that in as DLC, which at that point, maybe the game will be worth playing. But even then, as I said, the game gates so much content. The game is... It's a bit of a grind. Because I really don't enjoy the core gameplay loop as much as I hoped I would. And as a result, the stuff that I'm having to do in the meantime is not compelling enough to keep me going. And the core gameplay loop isn't distracting me enough from what's going on. I'm hunting, I'm gathering, and over and over and over again. And as I said, I think those addition of convenience skills are a tacit admission that part of your core gameplay loop actually sucks and is boring and nobody wants to do it. If it was interesting, why would you make people do less of it? You could argue that's an option and it's a choice, but in my eyes, those systems are needless busy work used to pad the game out, and those skills are an admission that they are. That, to me, is a fundamentally flawed part of not only this game, but a lot of open-world games, a lot of Ubisoft's core design philosophy. Thank God the game doesn't have radio towers, but it pretty much has everything else, you know? And frankly, it kind of does have radio towers. It's just got caves that are kind of tricky to navigate in the same way that the Far Cry 4 radio towers were. So, it sort of does. That's Primal, ladies and gentlemen. If you hadn't guessed, I don't like it. I found my time with it to be tedious, I found the setting to be wasted, and that to be disappointing, and as I said before, the performance of this game is dire. So, I will tell you later, after the release, and after the patch, and after the drivers, as to whether or not this runs well, but even if it did, I wouldn't play any more of it, and that's a shame. I feel kind of sad, honestly. I genuinely do. This franchise... What are you doing, Mittens? But I think Mittens has Parkinson's disease. Anyway, my current stance on this game is no. Where's my wingsuit? I miss my wingsuit. Where's my grenade launcher? Where's my pagan min? Where's my truck? Where's my customized guns? A step backwards, not only in setting, but in terms of mechanics, complexity, depth, and my level of interest. Far Cry Primal, ladies and gentlemen, available for full price or your regional equivalent, which I suppose would still be full price, on Steam. And of course, it's a Uplay game, because that's a selling point. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then by all means do feel free to click the like button. If you did not, the dislike button is right there. And I'll see you next time.